In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Veni Sancte Spiritus, repletorum codifiterium. Et tui amoris in eis sinem accende, emite spiritum tuum creabuntur.
Et nobis faciutere.
Oremus, Deus qui codifiterium Sancti Spiritus, ilus justin in doco Christi, da nobis in eodem spiritu recta sapere, et Deus emigas in cadere per Christum Dominum nostrum.
Amen.
Qua Maria Immaculatum.
Ora pro nobis.
Sancte Joseph.
Ora pro nobis.
Sancte Joseph terror daemonum.
Ora pro nobis.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. So we're looking at the act of faith. Thesis 1. In order that the mysteries of faith may be reasonably credible, there must be a certainty of the divine origin of the fact of revelation, that it is supernatural, quod modum, as to the manner. So, in other words, we want to make sure that all that is contained in Revelation truly is from God. So how do we know this? Major, Michael?
Nothing is reasonably believable by divine faith unless it is not only probably but evidently credible.
Minor?
But nothing is evidently credible unless it appears from certain signs that it is supernaturally revealed by God.
Yes. So just take, for example, with Moses facing Pharaoh. Let God's people go. Let my people go, said Moses. Pharaoh was resisting. Pharaoh would not comply. So God gave visible symbols, visible signs. Name some of them.
The locusts.
Yeah, how many plagues were there?
12.
Yeah.
Plagues.
And Moses also threw his staff down, and all the other witch priests threw their staffs down, and what happened?
What was this? The earth was a spring of water.
No, not this time.
They turned into
The
snakes.
and his snake ate their
Yeah. Yes. So these are visible signs that God gave to show Moses was not just some fluke. He really was chosen and sent by God. So same with all that we believe in the faith. God does give a sufficient amount of evidence to show this is me. Conclusion.
Therefore, that the mysteries of faith be reasonably credible, reason must know from certain signs that the fact of revelation is supernatural, at least quod modum.
Explanation of the major. Reread the major.
Nothing is reasonably believable by divine faith unless it is not only probably but evidently credible.
To have faith in general, it is necessary that something be evidently credible and not just probably credible, because probability only gives opinion in which one has the fear of erring. But faith, even human faith, lest it be imprudent and credulous, that is, too easily believing, must have evidence of credibility, and not mere probability, since by faith one firmly believes what is seriously asserted to us. And divine faith has the greatest firmness as founded on an infallible testimony. But the will, under the influence of grace, cannot reasonably and irrevocably move the intellect to believe, unless there is a sufficient and legitimate reason for this motion. So, yes. And then proof of the minor. Nothing is evident for reason. Reread the minor, please, Michael.
But nothing is evidently credible unless it appears from certain signs that it is supernaturally revealed by God.
So, proof of the minor. Nothing is evident for reason unless there are three things certain. 1, for any credibility, A, the fact of the testimony. The fact of the testimony. So, you got a phone call. That's a fact. Veracity of the witness, it's your mother that called. Veracity of the witness. Due knowledge to the testimony, it is truthful. So the fact, the witness, and due knowledge to testify. 2, for divine credibility, in fact, it is revealed by
God.
and God is absolutely,
Truthful.
and God is.
Infallible.
Thesis 2, a moral certainty is enough. So, what kind of certainties are there? There's numerous certainties. This is just showing that a moral certainty suffices to believe all of Revelation. Again, certitude is a strong assent to a truth without the fear of erring, which can be A, everyone,
Metaphysical certitude.
B,
Physical certitude.
C.
Moral speculative certitude.
Yes, so what's metaphysical certitude, Anthony?
Metaphysical certitude, which is founded in the metaphysical necessity of what is asserted. For example, a triangle has 3 sides.
Yes, that's absolutely certain, provable, demonstrable, etc. B, physical certitude, Anthony?
Is based on a physical necessity, example, the laws of nature, in which is observed a constancy of fact or effect, like the sun rising.
Yes. 3, moral speculative certitude, moral certitude.
Founded on moral necessity and the moral impossibility of the opposite. It is based on the constancy and uniformity observed in the free actions of men, where it is taken as a certain that men will speak the truth in given circumstances. For example, it is morally impossible for such a witness in these circumstances to lie, truths based on the testimony of others.
So, let's see. So the faithful believe the priests by moral certitude, especially when he teaches the faith, catechism, and gives serious advice. The moral certitude of many witnesses in court. So proofs of the scientific certitude. A, go on, Anthony.
Scientific certitude is not possible for everyone. Such a certitude based on reducing the value of the motives of credibility to the first principles of reason is impossible for children and the rudes.
That's the
Uneducated.
rudes is uneducated.
For whom suffices the certitude of common sense. Nevertheless, there must be at least some motive, like the church. Such a scientific credibility or proof of the origin of Christianity pertains to theologians and to the church as a whole, but for no one person is it required.
Okay. 2, a physical certitude, go on.
Is not commonly possible for all, simply because not all can actually see the miracles of Christ, such as the raising of Lazarus from the dead, in which is the most evident sensible sign. For others, this can only be known from human testimony, which is then a moral certitude.
Yeah, so it's on a moral certitude that you know the Civil War existed, and that you know the Battle of Antietam took place. Because so many witnesses. You have photographs, right? You have the evidence in the trenches. Bullets buried in the ground. You know, dead bodies dug up with bullets in their shins. And the amputations. So this is all moral certitude that it really took place. 3,
Divine faith does not exact a higher certitude of credibility than moral. This is certain, since to act morally in grave decisions of life, a moral certitude suffices.
so as was brought up in class years ago, a moral certitude is enough to condemn a criminal to death. All the evidence points to this one person is guilty. The eyewitnesses and all the evidence that's there. So that's enough to condemn someone to death. So it's of heavy weight, moral certitude. It's of heavy weight. So a moral certitude is enough. That's the thesis 2. Remember, go back to thesis 1. In order that the mysteries of faith may be reasonably credible, there must be a certainty of the divine origin of the fact of revelation, that it is supernatural as to the mode. So there must be enough evidence to say this is from God. A moral certitude is enough. 3, thesis 3, this moral certitude can be had by all men, at least with the help of grace, although grace is not absolutely necessary. Read on, Anthony.
For most men, the main motive is that the church proposes these Christian mysteries as revealed by God. But the divine origin of Christianity thus proposed is morally certain in the order of reason. Thus someone might say he believes in the creed because the Holy Church believes. Moreover, the Church universal, as opposed to some particular church, has the marks by which it can be recognized.
Which are?
1, Holy Catholic and Apostolic.
Number 2, brother.
Although grace is not absolutely necessary to arrive at this rational certitude, but grace can direct the attention of the hearer to the true motive of credibility, which is preached with the mysteries, and to correct the intention to rightly judge, so that the interior grace of God can supply for what is lacking in the external proposition of the faith. Not that there is no evidence of credibility, but it manifests this evidence. It is only in extraordinary cases that grace totally supplies for the external proposition of the motives, such as in the conversion of St. Paul. The Protestants say that it is an ordinary grace allowing the individual to judge of the credibility of mysteries by any internal inspiration alone.
Yes, Protestants say, I believe it because it makes me feel good. But they reject the external judgment of reason. Protestantism is most irrational. It's a blind leap of faith. But Catholicism, there is sufficient evidence. Moral certitude. The Church has always taught it. There is enough signs to show that this is the true Church, that it is, all the evidence, miracles, and prophecies, as we've said. 3, read on.
With regard to those who are invincibly ignorant of Catholics preaching,
Of Catholic preaching.
Pope Pius
Ninth.
IX
Denzinger, 1677.
said that these men, having the use of reason, receive sufficient grace to find the way of salvation.
That's right. So, Joe Pygmy in Australia, God gives him sufficient grace to save his soul. This is a teaching of the Church. That's Pope Pius IX, Denzinger, 1677. Do you have it in here? Denzinger?
The Denzinger is...
Where is it? Okay, can you go get it?
Yeah.
And also, in the condemnations of Jansen and Bayus, the Church condemned those who say Jews, Protestants, non-Catholics are absolutely condemned because God does not give sufficient grace for everyone to save their soul. That's condemned by the Church. I had to battle with the editor of the Catholic Candle out of Chicago, who was holding this position. He held it for many years. And he's wrong. And I wrote him the quotes of the popes condemning that very error. Okay, Denzinger, 1677. Now there's an English version and there's a Latin version, so let's see if this is the correct.
This is what it says in this. Moreover, the Council of Trent.
Louder.
Moreover, the Council teaches that Although it sometimes happens that this contrition is perfect through charity and reconciles man to God before the sacrament is actually received, this reconciliation, nevertheless, is not to be ascribed to contrition itself without the desire of the sacrament, a desire that is included in it.
Okay. All right. Can you hand that? Let me just read. You can close it. Let me just read you what I quoted to this gentleman who was going against church teaching and publicly doing it, publicly putting out there in his Catholic candle that God does not give sufficient grace to everyone to save their soul. First, I have another quote written quickly in here. St. Louis de Montfort, in The Secret of Mary, says, God, though infinitely good, does not grant equal grace to all, but to each soul he gives sufficient grace. St. Louis de Montfort. So it's true, God doesn't give everybody equal grace. Some he loves more. That's his choice. But let me find this here. It would be the errors of Bayus. It's Trent. Yeah, this is all the council of main councils of the church. I'm going to have to take it here. But anyway, I don't want to take time looking for this. I thought I had it marked. But, here. No, that's on the Council of Trent. Oh, well, I can't, I have to do some digging. I thought I had it marked. But basically, it's just quoting many quotes of the popes, the Catholic Church condemning these errors, that God doesn't give sufficient grace to everyone to save their soul. So it's a dark error. It really leaves souls in, on the path to despair. But as our Lord says, my heavenly Father gives the sun to the good and the bad, and the rain to the good and the bad.
Yeah, that error, or that understanding of it, well, the gentleman you said, his understanding of it leads to the Calvinist interpretation of predestination. Because you're basically saying that God, kind of ordained some people to heaven, some people to hell.
That's right. It's very dark. And I've told him he has to publicly recant these errors. These are heresies. I haven't followed his Catholic candle, but I hope he has by now publicly corrected his errors, because he was promoting them very vehemently. All right. So, does God give everyone sufficient grace to save their soul?
Yes.
Even the Jews?
Yes.
Even the Muslims?
Yes.
Even the most depraved pagans?
Yes.
Yes, he does. And that shows the goodness of God. It's the goodness of God. Anyone can save their soul. They have sufficient grace. And if they especially pray, God will give it. Because he is a loving Father, and he does not want the death of a soul, but
then you be converted and live.
yes. Very important. Very important point. 3, the knowability of divine revelation in particular. The demonstrability of credibility from the motives of credibility. So this was in class, February 30, 1989. How old were you, Anthony?
-9.
How old were you, Michael?
9. -13.
So you boys weren't even born yet, so this must be like ancient. This demonstration is necessary for the faith of the church as a whole, since the faithful generally invoke the wisdom of the learned to answer the objections of the incredulous against the motives of credibility, which objections are given in the name of philosophical science and history. Also, it is most fitting that the church defend the irrefutable value of the signs of revelation, since they come from God. Such a demonstration is possible, as is evident from the definitions of the church. Denzinger, 1813, miracles are possible, can be known. Miracles prove the divine origin of the Christian religion. Denzinger, 1799, faith and reason help one another. Denzinger, 1624, reason must seek at least the fact of revelation. So it is fitting for men to discover, has God spoken to us? What did he say? How do I find it? Where do I find it? And I have to, you have to say the internet on its good side is like a huge library, which anyone of goodwill can find the faith. They really can. They can find the Catholic tradition. They can read the encyclicals of the popes, the fathers of the church. They can find it. They have to do searching and they have to pray to avoid error, but there's enough there to lead those of goodwill. The scientific demonstration used is properly indirect, since miracles directly manifest the intervention of the divine omnipotence and indirectly confirm the divine origin of the preaching of the faith. Notion of the motive of credibility. Motiva credibilitatis sunt signa vel note quibus religio revelata fit evidenter credibilis fide divina. In English, brother?
Signs are notes by which revealed religion is made evidently credible for divine faith.
Yes. What are the motives of credibility? Signs are notes. Signs, miracles, prophecies, notes, marks. These three things are required in order that some fact can be a sufficient motive of credibility. What are these three? First, Gabriel?
Incerto.
Which means?
The sign must be certain in itself.
No, what's the Latin mean?
Oh. In itself certain.
Yes. That is, the sign must be certain in itself. It must be, without doubt, a clear sign. 2.
That this sign certainly comes from a special intervention of God.
Yes. So, clearly above the order of nature. 3.
That this sign confirms the revelation with certainty.
Yes. So the miracles confirm the religion. It's believable. 2. Division. The church speaks of 3 kinds of motives or signs, though one is really not separable from the other. 1, 2, 3. 1, Gabriel?
External proofs of divine revelation, namely divine acts and especially miracles and prophecies, which constitute the surest signs and are suitable to everyone's understanding. Denzinger, 1790.
2.
The wonderful life of the church itself, quote, because of its marvelous propagation, its exalted sanctity, and its inexhaustible fruitfulness in all that is good, because of its Catholic unity and unshaken stability, end quote, from Denzinger, 1794.
Yes. So the marvelous spreading of the faith. How does 12 apostles convert the world? How does St. Peter end up replacing Nero? It's impossible, humanly speaking. That's why the fight of tradition, we've already won, even though we're down to just a handful. We've already won, because truth wins. Christ wins. So the church is victorious. She's exalted in her sanctity. Who else can get a bunch of women to live together in one house and get along? Only the Catholic Church can do this. in a convent. Right? And who else can give men who can be very barbaric and abuse women very easy? How do you get an army of men living chaste, living a hard life of work, prayer, and structured? Only the church does this, and to vow chastity, vow virginity and purity. And then the inexhaustible fruitfulness. In the United States, for example, the first hospitals were founded by who?
The Catholic nuns.
Catholic nuns. They were the first nurses. That's a fact. That's a historic fact. And most women were busy, taking care of their own children and their families, which is the right thing. But who is free to take care of others' children and wayward children and orphan children? It's the nuns, because they're married to Christ. And they have a rule of life. So think of the conversion of Europe, through the Catholic Church's conversion of Europe, elevating education. We think we're the smartest age in history. We're so dumb compared to the medieval man. St. Thomas Aquinas, which many people can't even begin to read as they just get lost. St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theology, you know what he wrote it for?
Didn't he write it for high school kids?
Yeah, high school students, beginners. He wrote it for beginners.
So that was him dumbing it down.
Yes. So, the education, the arts, the music, it was all beautiful from the influence of the Catholic Church. So this is what he's saying. So the life of the church itself is proof that she is divine. She's human. There's been bad popes, there's been bad bishops, bad priests, bad Catholics. But in spite of being human, she's also divine. And I think Our Lady is preparing one of the greatest proofs that the Catholic Church is the true church. Because if she rises from this disaster, it's the hand of God. And she will. We will have a good pope finally. Tradition will be restored. And all these beautiful churches that are sitting there, the main altars are either bulldozed out of there or sitting there dusty. They're going to be restored. 3, the internal motives.
Which the church does not exclude. Denzinger, 1790. Such as the marvelous fulfilling of the aspirations of the human heart, but condemns the Protestant doctrine according to which, quote, man ought to be impelled towards faith only by each one's internal experience or private inspiration, end quote. Denzinger, 1812.
Yeah, condemned this Protestant idea of private interpretation. Condemned. But, okay, so motives of credibility you have in this chart, page 65 in the middle. On the top you have what?
External to the consciousness of the believer.
And then, distinguished from?
Internal to the consciousness of the believer.
So external motives of credibility, internal motives of credibility. External motives of credibility can be either
Intrinsic to religion or intrinsic to religion.
Yeah, extrinsic or intrinsic to religion. Of the extrinsic to religion, there are
Miracles and prophecy.
intrinsic to religion, there are
Sublimity of doctrine, wonderful life of church, no contradictions.
yes. So there's the positive side of things, the sublimity of doctrine, that it's a beautiful doctrine, and it's enlightening, it elevates men, brings hope, right? People who live in sin, they have hope with the Catholic faith because they can be forgiven. They can begin a new life. And then the wonderful life of the church with all the saints, all the good fruits, monasteries, convents, large families, vocations, fruitfulness, even the economy prospers, even the politics is admirable. And then no contradictions, that's the negative side of things. There are no contradictions in the Catholic faith. There's apparent contradictions, but they're soluble with a clear explanation. So, all right, and then so those are the external motives of credibility. Internal motives of credibility is divided into what and what?
Universal and individual.
Universal being
Fulfillment of the aspirations of mankind.
and individual.
Experience of the peace and joy not of the world.
So this is the subjective element, right? This is what the Protestants say all religion is based on, all belief. But the Church admits it. And how does the motives of credibility fulfill the aspirations of mankind? As I was saying, there's hope for sinners, for forgiveness. There's motives to be better. We have to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, Christ says. And love of neighbor. We're not allowed to steal, cheat, lie, kill our neighbor. We're not allowed to be dishonest in business. So people love this. The average people don't want their property stolen. They want a just paying employer. And all this is taught by the Catholic Church. And she also condemns usury. How many people are losing their homes, losing their jobs because of usury? Usury is charging on an unproductive loan, which is what the banks do all the time. We'll give you $200, but every month there's interest. If you don't pay back, you owe us $500, right? And then the individual side of the motives of credibility, experience of the peace and the joy not of this world. The peace of union with God, the peace of living as best one can according to His commandments, and the joy. I mean, who else has Christmas? One of the most joyful times of the year, and the resurrection. Who else has all these feast days of saints throughout the whole year? You know, the daily grind that Protestants speak of is made cheerful by the feasts of many saints. And even in Lent, this is what's so admirable about the pre-55, during Lent in the 62, there's more purple than saints. It's all the ferial of Lent masses, which is fine. But in the pre-55, you have, even in Lent, white vestments, red vestments for saints and martyrs. The saints are always honored. That's something very beautiful. And I think that's behind the de-ranking of the saints' feast during Lent with Bonini, because it pleases the Protestants, because they don't like honoring the saints. So that's another ecumenical motive. Agitorium nostrum in nomine Domini.